I've worked with a lot of successful people, but what separates a financially successful from the professionally successful without fail is their money management. I've been managing my own money for over a decade, and since I've become a qualified accountant, I've realized the industry has a habit of trying to overcomplicate things. So if you find yourself losing motivation weeks or days after committing to a budgeting approach, I'm with you. But in 2020, I discovered the actual secrets to success in budgeting and haven't looked back since. The secret is effective simplicity. So in this video, I'm going to show you my budgeting approach that you can steal today for free, that's going to take you 5 minutes a month to maintain, and I'll teach you a trick I use to reduce my expenses by thousands a year that some of you aren't going to be happy about. So let's get into it. So here is our starting point. As you can see, I use a Google Sheet which is broken down by month. For those of you that have watched my payday routine video, you were taken through the ins and outs of this tab here, which is definitely worth watching after this video once you get a bit more context. But within this tab, we set a financial baseline. A financial baseline is effectively what we expect to come in and out of our account at an absolute bare bones minimum every month, assuming our life doesn't change drastically. It's important to be frugal and realistic with this. And as you can see, I've left out any income other than my core 9-to-5 job, as they fluctuate far too much. So it's just salary as income and rent, utilities and groceries for expenses. This is important to do for many reasons, but in the context of this video, it helps us fill out these tabs which represent our projected income and expenses for the month. So at the beginning of each month, I start by filling out each of these for my income, as this is the most stable of all the inputs here. You'll see that this populates our budgeted income here and here. This may seem very basic to start with, but things start to get a bit more detailed soon, which is where you'll really see the benefits, so please pay attention and try not to skip around too much if possible. Now follow exactly the same process, but this time for your expenses in the budgeted column. If it's your first month doing this, you'll have to give your best estimate to some of these, but from month 2 onwards, you should be able to know fairly comfortably what your expected monthly expenses should be for all of these sections. The next step is to populate the actuals. The best way to do this in a quick and thorough way is to just go into your bank account and export all transactions into an Excel format and copy them into here. I've then formatted my budget so that when I put my income and expenses, it auto-populates them in the actual columns like so. So let's fast forward to when all of this inputting is done and we'll move on to the good stuff. Okay, so as you can see, we have populated the budgeted and actuals. The very first thing to look at is to just do a high level glance around your expenses versus your income. Where are you spending your money disproportionately compared to other areas? This isn't the focus of the video, but it's worth noting down these areas where you have the highest likelihood to be able to find ways to improve upon your net income position each month. So back to the actual budgeting. You'll see that down here in savings we're empty. Normally, I would have this filled out with my planned savings approach for each month, which would be treated similarly to the expenses, where I reconcile it against what I actually spend in the month. However, assuming this is your first month doing this, it's beneficial to leave this blank until this point of the process to analyze how much you feasibly have to save each month. As you can see, we have around $4,000 left at the end of each month, so let's plan each month to allocate our savings like this. You'll notice this pulls through the asset/liability tab, where we get an indication of what we're saving each month to build our assets, and if you happen to have outstanding debt, what we're paying each month to lower our liabilities. These debts should form a similar section like the savings one, if that's applicable to you. Great. So that's the core and candidly the most boring part of the monthly process done. Now we have this really valuable data that we can use to help inform our longer term budget and goals. So let's go through that. So back to the asset liability page, you'll see a goal table here. I like to break this down over 1, 3 and 5 years. Going into 10 years and beyond for motivation's sake is just too far. These goals are meant to excite you and are in addition to your long-term savings goals that I mentioned just earlier. With that being said, we need to figure out how much we have to allocate each month to these additional goals once we've paid our expenses and allocated to our savings. So I'd advise taking an average of your normal savings, but let's work with what we have here, which is $2,000 left of disposable income each month. Our set goals here are to buy a vacation, a car and a house deposit over the 1, 3 and 5 year period. The financial impact is entered here, and we then divide that by 12, 36, and 60 months to get an idea of how much we should be saving each month to get to where we want to be by the end of each period of time, and how much the allocation is of your monthly disposable income. This gives you some exciting goals that you can work towards, whilst also knowing you're setting yourself up perfectly for the long-term future by still allocating to your core savings that we did in the previous section. This brings me to my point around why this is the approach you should try next, and to drop all of these insanely complex stockbroker-esque type tracking systems for your money. What we've developed here is a financial baseline, a tracking system to visualize and have constant and concrete knowledge of your income and expenses, as well as a goal for both income and expenses built in through your initial input of budgeted versus your final reconciliation between the budgeted and actuals. We also have a built-in element which ensures your long-term financial health, and a more custom and fun goal setting section which separately tracks exciting goals. This is so effective because you understand it. It's easy, satisfying, and tracks goals that you actually care about. Going into your previous month's tracker and figuring out how to cut some of those expenses so you can allocate more into a vacation may seem counterintuitive, but it forms habits and builds financial confidence that will give you so much momentum, so please do give it a try. Before you write this off as boring and oversimplified, listen to this. Behavioral economics teaches us that human decision, including financial ones, are heavily influenced by cognitive biases and emotional reasoning. Tracking your finances taps into this control bias, a psychological principle that suggests individuals feel more confident and in charge when they actively manage their affairs. A study in the Journal of Consumer Research highlights that people who regularly monitor their finances are less prone to impulsive spending and more likely to make rational financial decisions. Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect brilliantly encapsulates why simple actions like tracking expenses lead to outsized returns over time. It's about the cumulative power of consistency. By routinely managing your income and expenses, you create a pattern of behavior that builds financial discipline. The discipline, consistently applied, can exponentially increase your wealth over the long term. For instance, reducing unnecessary expenses by a small amount each day can free up capital for investments which compound over time. In conclusion, tracking your income and expenses is more than a financial habit. It's a wealth building strategy deeply rooted in psychological principles, and this exact approach and system I'm showing you takes huge advantage of this and will create those long-term outsized results for you, and it's so simple to do. So with that slight tangent, let's keep going. You probably noted that this progress view tab hasn't been touched. This builds on the gamification element and visualizes and tracks your savings and goals in a fun way. This is a video for another time, so if people are interested, please make sure you comment below that you want to see this, and I'll make sure I start building this one out next. Please also make sure you subscribe and like this video to make sure you don't miss any future videos that build upon this approach. This is literally it. You truly do not need anything more fancy than this to track your finances. Yes, you need to figure out what you can allocate to savings each month, but this will visualize it all for you. From there, you can work on increasing that income figure and decreasing the expense figure. And this is where you can start to get fancy, using lots of interesting finance tricks, psychological hacks, and even gamification to maximize your wealth in the long, medium, and short term. The absolute best way to get started with this is to have a financial cleanse, which will fast track your success massively, giving you a huge boost of motivation and just cleaning up your finances as a whole. There's a number of steps to this, so if you want a step-by-step guide of what I do, watch this video here. Thank you all so much for watching. Please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next one.